We get a lot of our stories from our listener inbox. You tell us about things you're going through that spark new ideas for us, or you react to questions that we put out. Like right now, you are sending us love stories that started by a chance meeting in real life, not by online dating. We've asked you to tell us how you sized someone up without a profile to guide you. If you have one of these stories, you can send it to us in an email or record a voice memo and send it to us at deathsexmoney@slate.com. And when we ask you these kinds of big open questions, our hope is that we'll inspire you to reach out with a particular specific story that's about something a lot of us have gone through in some way. What we don't actively try to do with our stories and questions is to scold you or to trigger you to blow up your life. But we do get notes about how our show has affected decisions you've made. One memorable example is from 2019 when we got an email in our inbox with the subject line, "Sugar babies cost me $8,000 and my marriage." It was from a listener to our show who said that a previous episode we'd made about sex work had inspired him to check out the website Seeking Arrangements and to start paying for sex. We called this listener Ethan. He was married, and his wife found out, and they were in the process of divorcing. And he wanted to talk to us about the experience. So we called him and made an episode about it.
I was a little bit intrigued after listening to the DSM podcast. And so I went on and started looking around and started, talking with people here and there. And there was one person that we seemed to click online. And so, we met up and, walked around in a park for a little while and then went back to my place.
Did you have sex?
Yeah.
That interview stuck with me because on the one hand, Ethan wanted to confess and talk about what had happened. But as we talked, it became clear that he hadn't really faced the consequences of all his decisions. Not about hiring sex workers necessarily, but about lying to his now ex-wife and then blaming her, and also kind of blaming our podcast for making him do it. It's been 5 years since he and I talked, and I recently reached back out because I was curious what's happened since. And he wrote back pretty quickly. "Honestly, I've been both hoping for and fearing an email like this for some time," he wrote. "Talking to you catapulted me into another level of grief, sorrow, pain, and eventually healing, growth, and understanding." So today, we're going to play you parts of our original conversation that I had with Ethan and our new follow-up interview from just a couple of weeks ago. I really like talking to Ethan again. And really, for any of us that are carrying around shame about past decisions, it's an interesting listen. It got me thinking about how people change and what happens after we stop recording.
I left the studio, had a very interesting interaction with the sound engineer there, which I was not at all comfortable with. I looked like an alien, according to, based on the look that he gave me. I biked home, and I sat in the shower, and I cried.
This is Death, Sex, and Money. The show from Slate about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. I'm Anna Sale.
Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Discover. If you've listened to Death, Sex, and Money for a while, you know how important acceptance is when it comes to personal growth. And you know who else is big on acceptance? Discover. You see, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. That's a whole lot of places and a whole lot of acceptance. which is great for Discover, but even better for you. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/credit card. Let me ask you first, when you received an email from me after many years, what did it feel like to open it?
It's certainly like reopening a wound.
This is Ethan from a few weeks ago. He said that hearing from me had brought him right back to early 2020 when we released the episode with him.
Like thinking back to that time was really hard, just that it was the worst thing that cheating on my wife was the worst thing I did. Yeah, like I said, it's a recording of me like at my worst.
When we first talked 5 years ago, Ethan had already confessed to his now ex-wife about cheating. They were in the process of divorcing, and he felt alone.
I've lost most of our mutual friends, and I think that so few people know the whole truth, know everything. I've told certain people that I've cheated, but nobody about with a sugar baby.
Are you trying to explain yourself?
Yeah, a little bit.
Ethan told me by the time he cheated, there was already strain in his relationship with his wife. We asked her about it too. She didn't want to be interviewed. She wrote in an email, "However he's characterized our marriage to you, I don't feel the need to know or respond." She also said, "I wish I'd had the self-confidence to recognize that our marriage would never work." Around the time Ethan and his wife got engaged in 2013, they moved for Ethan's job, far away from family and friends. And after their wedding was over, Ethan says it felt like they lost their purpose as a couple.
I like to say that we didn't have a rough patch. We had a rough marriage. And things our communication had really changed pretty quickly after we got married. I kind of slowly just sort of absorbed the idea, the belief that, that what I felt wasn't okay, or wasn't okay to express. And I think particularly around intimacy, that was something that there had been a lot of conflict about, but it was all really under the surface. We didn't have the tools to be able to talk about it.
Was it that you wanted to have sex more or in a different way, and she didn't want to, and she didn't want to talk about it further?
Yeah. So yes to both, more and in a different way. And before we had gotten married, there was a lightheartedness to our sex life, and that disappeared rather quickly. And she was dealing with depression as well during this time, which of course, I think makes it difficult to want to have sex and then also to, feel lighthearted about it.
Looking back, did it feel like you, it started with the mismatch sexually and then bled into how you felt emotionally, or how do you think about the relationship of those two?
No, I think I think it was the distance perpetuated each other in both realms. So it just became sort of this negative feedback loop. The less that we were able to connect intimately, then the less that we were able to connect on a day-to-day basis, and they just kind of fed into each other.
Were you making more money than her?
Yeah.
A lot more?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. How do you think that played into the dynamic in your marriage?
I think that we, sort of fell into more heteronormative roles than I necessarily would have liked. That it was easier for me to work more and then make more than it was for her. So then sort of the house, duties ended up falling to her. She seemed to enjoy it. There were times when she was able to step back from her work, and that was something that she wanted at the time. So it was nice to be able to provide that for her.
Did it feel like you were in charge in your marriage?
Um, in some ways, I think that there was a dynamic that developed. Not that I was in charge, but that I had the louder voice. I think just sort of, I'm naturally inclined to speak my feelings out loud a little bit more than she. And so then what ended up happening was and I realized this after a few years that I ended up overpowering her, like in conversations and discussions and decisions. And there wasn't any conflict resolution.
I hear you saying kind of again and again in your marriage that you lost that ability to hear each other and to be honest with each other. I want to understand a little bit about how you think about your wife's depression playing into this. Like, did it feel like she couldn't handle disagreements with you or you pushing back on her because of her illness?
I don't know if because of her illness or not, but that certainly I couldn't rely on her. There was, I think, one moment early on in our marriage when I had a really hard day at work, and I remember going home and starting to talk about my day, and she was, I think she was sad about something. I can't remember what exactly, but I remember the feeling, and I remember I think I said, can I just be the one who's had the worst day today? And feeling like I couldn't, like that it was like even when I had a really bad day, and asking for some emotional support from her. Or for her to like be the caretaker, like I wanted her to take care of me. And I was asking for that and she couldn't. And that was really hard. And that really stuck with me, of that she can't take care of me when I need it.
Still, though, Ethan says the idea of divorce initially felt really daunting. Separating their possessions, splitting their lives. He and his wife decided to try couples counseling, but it didn't last long. A few months after they stopped going is when Ethan had that first secret date with a sugar baby on his business trip. When you come back from your work trip, what did it feel like seeing your wife?
So I can be really good at compartmentalizing, and I think that was going on really strong. It actually, it's really taken me our divorce to realize, I think the damage that I had done to our relationship. At first, my mindset was, I am going to go and have a good time. And my justification for it initially was, I'm going to have a good time so that I can have more energy to try and fix my marriage. Because I think, when I first went on to seeking arrangements, I was exhausted. But I wasn't ready to give up on the marriage yet.
So when you were telling yourself this is going to give me more energy, was part of the calculus that somehow this would make you feel less resentful of your wife because you were getting other of your needs taken care of by other people?
For sure, yeah.
At first, Ethan would only hire women for sex when he was out of town for work. But then he stopped traveling as much and used seeking arrangement to find someone locally.
I had such a good time when I was traveling, and that was, I don't know, I guess it was addictive in a certain kind of way. Like it was something that once it was gone for a couple of months, then I wanted it back.
And when you would have dates, how would you explain where you were going?
I would either working out or I'm going to read at a coffee shop.
To read?
Yeah, I think it depended on the situation, or sometimes, sort of blaming, that I had to go work, on something for a couple of hours, and so I just needed to be, out of the house for a little while to just like sit down and get something done, and then come back.
And was that always meeting up for sex?
No, we ended up would have lunch or coffee, from time to time, sort of depending on what our schedules were like.
Did it feel nice to be with someone where what she needed from you was much simpler than what your wife needed from you?
Yeah, for sure. I think that it was. She was very independent emotionally, and so that just like what she needed was another revenue stream, and then the rest of it was that the way that we interacted, the way like we talked about things, it was like clear that if she didn't see me again, like that would be kind of a bummer, but not horrible.
And was that kind of titillating?
It was, I think it probably activated some reptilian part of my brain of like, oh, this person, doesn't need me. Like, how can I turn the charm up to 11 to make her, want to need me?
Ethan says those coffees and lunches and meetups for sex went on for about a year. Would you pay cash?
Yeah, initially.
Initially, and then what happened?
And then I used Venmo.
What would you put in the memo?
Ridiculous emojis. Not all about sex.
Coming up, Ethan tallies up all the money he spent on those sugar baby dates after he decides to tell his wife he's been cheating on her.
She knew who I was at the best of times, and so she needed to know who I was at my worst.
Over the last few weeks, you have been sending us your IRL relationship stories, times you fell in love in person, not online.
We met at my friend's birthday at a club. We, liked the look of each other and were dancing together all night until I busted a move that I clearly could not complete. And I fell down and broke my arm. Surveyed the damage and realized I have to go to the hospital immediately. And we all bundled into a cab, and then he also just stayed all night. And while I was on the laughing gas and they were resetting my arm, I was telling the nurse that I think he might be a keeper.
We want to hear your dramatic in-person falling in love stories. Did you have a meet-cute moment sharing a cab with a stranger? Or take a chance asking someone out on a subway platform? We want to hear from you. The more dramatic and random, the better. In my own life, my most dramatic random love story wasn't so much about meeting a new partner, but about meeting someone while I was trying to figure out whether to get back together with Arthur, my now husband, when we'd split up. Longtime listeners know this story. My Cupid was former Wyoming Senator Al Simpson, along with his wife, Anne. Al died last week at 93, under the full moon. He was a dear friend who taught me so much about how to love family and love your friends and community. Really love. Love is an action verb. I will miss him so much. Part of my love with Al was trading jokes and stories, including embarrassing, self-effacing ones, the ones that let on you're learning something along the way. You can tell us your in-person dating stories, the meet-cutes, chance encounters, or disappointments. Record a voice memo and send it to us at deathsexmoney@slate.com. On the next episode, I talk with a middle-aged couple in the Midwest who decided to spice up their marriage by making adult content together.
So there's this funny moment where we go into the local big box electronics store, and the person in the nice polo shirt says, "Can I help you?" And we said, "Yeah, we're looking for a video camera." And so she's showing us, and she said, "So what are you gonna film?" And I said, "Stuff." And she said, "Like sports?" And like, "Yeah, like sports.
Yeah.
You're gonna need a tripod."
But this couple, Joe and Carmen, ran into trouble when they put their adult videos on the internet. Joe was the chancellor of his university, and when the videos were discovered, he lost his job.
They wrote and said the statement, he's been terminated because he did something abhorrent and disgusting.
Joe and Carmen tell me their side of this story. It's about the workplace and internet culture, and when your private hobby is publicly distributed. Finally, over on the Slate show How To, they are talking about another version of sexual exploration. Host Courtney Martin talks with Nicole Hardy, who wrote a book called Confessions of a Latter-day Virgin, to offer advice to Elizabeth, a 43-year-old woman who recently left Mormonism and is ready to explore sex in new ways. You can find that episode of How To wherever you get your podcasts. This new year, why not let Audible expand your life by listening? Explore over 1 million audiobooks, podcasts, and exclusive Audible originals that'll inspire and motivate you. I've been using the Audible app on family road trips. It's been fun to find things that appeal to all of us, parents and elementary-age kids. I've got 2 recommendations. First, The Wonder of Stevie, the Audible Originals podcast series about Stevie Wonder's incomparable run of creative output in the 1970s. It's really well made and an important cultural literacy education for my kids. The music is so good. And recommendation 2, Hatchet, a young adult novel by Gary Paulson about a boy trying to survive in the wilderness. The one we listened to was narrated by Peter Coyote. It's fantastic and had us so worried about what was going to happen to young Brian. Audible has thousands of titles right at your fingertips. They have audiobooks, podcasts, and guided wellness programs. Just open the app and tap into your well-being with advice and insight from leading influencers, experts, and professionals. Whatever your focus or interest, there's a listen for it on Audible. You'll find titles on health, relationships, career, finance, and so much more. Ultimately, it can be about starting good habits. Making a positive change is the best resolution you can make for yourself, and Audible can help. Let Audible help you reach the goals you set for yourself. Start listening today when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/DSM. New members can try Audible now for free for 30 days with your first audiobook included. Visit audible.com/DSM or text DSM to 500-500. That's audible.com/DSM or text DSM to 500-500. When it comes to grocery shopping, you know there are some common problems. Maybe you don't have time to shop, or you have special dietary needs or health goals that are tough to stay on top of. That can all change thanks to Hungry Root. It's the easiest way to eat healthy. Hungry Root takes care of the weekly grocery shopping, recommending healthy groceries tailored to your taste. Just tell them your health goals and nutrition preferences, and they fill your cart with recommendations that get smarter as they learn more about you. Hungry Root has great options for the whole family, like top-quality meat and seafood, smoothies, kids' snacks, ready-to-eat meals, salad kits, and even supplements. For me, when I get my Hungry Root box, it usually comes on the weekend, and when I'm unboxing it, it is like this exercise in a certain kind of relief, because it's like, okay, we have these weekend night dinners accounted for. There's also some kids' snacks that I can put in their lunches or toss at them when they're hangry after aftercare pickup. I have backup to start the week, and it's easy because I don't really have to monitor my Hungry Root cart from week to week, because Hungry Root knows the kinds of meals that my family likes. So it's curated and also has some surprises so it doesn't get boring. You are going to love Hungry Root. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/DSM and use the code DSM. That's hungryroot.com/DSM. The code is DSM to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/DSM, code DSM. This is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate. I'm Anna Sale. While Ethan was still having secret meetups with the local sex worker, he says he and his wife decided to give couples counseling a second try. Ethan says it was his suggestion that they go. At first, he wasn't going to tell her about the cheating, just work on other issues in their marriage. But it came out after a couple of sessions.
We had a conversation, and where I said I was really feeling hopeless about being able to save the marriage, and she really wanted to try for 3 or 4 months and see how it goes. And then I realized, and this realization had been growing in me for quite some time, that she needed to know the truth before we spent any more time together. And so then I told her, and that was the day that we decided to get a divorce.
Did you know that when you disclosed that it was going to be a deal breaker for her?
Yeah. And I think partly that was part of the reason why I did it. Like having sort of a nuclear option that I could sort of bring out at any time was comforting in some kind of way, I think.
That makes me feel really mad at you.
You're not the only one. Yeah.
It feels very cowardly.
It does. It is, for sure. Yeah.
Like that you were telling yourself when you were having these, really satisfying dates with these women who weren't your wife, that you were doing it to save your marriage, while you also kind of knew in the back of your head you were like collecting ammunition to just like burn it all down should you need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the thing that it makes me think of is like when you described telling your wife that you were going reading or had work to do, like I'm flipping through all the times that my husband says he has to go work. And then I think like to have that realization that you're from your spouse that like, actually that was a total lie. It's not just revealing how you know who you were, it's also revealing to her how you felt about her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't get the weight of that really until I told her, and then she told me how she felt about that, and it really didn't. Yeah, that part really didn't hit me, and it was it's been worrisome, how easy it was for me to lie, about all of those times.
When Ethan's ex-wife wrote to us 5 years ago, the depth of that betrayal and its impact on her is what she wanted to make sure we understood. Maybe this is all an interesting story to you. For me, it was more than 7 years of my life, she wrote. It was finding out that in the end, despite his reassurances to the contrary, I was not enough for my husband. I'm still living through the fallout. Ethan's confessions to her had come in waves. First, that he cheated. Then that it was with sex workers. And then, he says, she demanded to know how much of their money he spent. He went through his receipts.
$8,000. It seems like a lot.
Something that I've noticed going through a divorce myself and then seeing friends go through divorces is like, there's this interesting thing that happens where it's such a private thing that you're having marital problems. It's a secret between you and your spouse. And then all of a sudden, it's a very public thing that affects every relationship you have because, your work colleagues know that you were married, your friends knew that you were married, and you have to have a sort of a story that you tell about what happened. What's the story that you tell?
I think that that we just we had a rough marriage. We tried really hard to be able to communicate with each other, and we just never built the foundation that we needed. And we had given it enough of a time. We had been married for just over 5 years. That was sort of enough. If we weren't going to be able to figure out that key part of our relationship then we weren't ever going to figure it out. And so, we needed to move on.
What do you think is the story she's telling about you?
I think her narrative, at least initially, I think it's now become more nuanced than this, but, we're getting a divorce because I cheated on her.
Do you think that's a fair assessment?
I think it's one lens to look through. I think it is, and I would hope that, that friends and family members and people she talks to, sort of know me and know life well enough that, it's never quite that simple. So it is a story. I don't think it's the most accurate.
Coming up, Ethan, 5 years later. We talk about what recording this episode was like for him and what's happened since.
I listened to the episode once. I paced around the house while I was doing so. And never listened to it again.
Hey, Death, Sex, and Money listeners. There is a new podcast launching from Michelle Obama and her big brother Craig called IMO. I'm curious. Are you curious? It's kind of like Death, Sex, and Money. IMO dives into the important and relatable topics on everyone's mind, from dating and relationships to family and faith. First Lady Michelle Obama and her brother Craig tackle everyday questions shaping our lives, relationships, and the world around us. And they're joined by guests to hear real questions from real people like you. And they offer practical advice, personal storytelling, and lots of laughs. On IMO, First Lady Michelle Obama and her brother Craig will share stories about being there for each other throughout their lives, from first crushes and fraught college years to landing at the White House and losing their mom. For 6 decades, they've been each other's most trusted counsel, and now they want to be that counsel for you. You can find episodes of IMO with Michelle Obama and Craig Robinson wherever you get podcasts. Who doesn't love the good things in life? Everyone enjoys a little luxury, but it's not always affordable, except when it comes to Quince. Quince can be your go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. If you haven't done it lately, let me encourage you just to go to Quince and browse around. I was just there looking at some Quince cotton scoop neck tees because I find they are perfect for layering and they really hold up. I wear them often this time of year. And then I just found myself poking around at the swimsuits, the silk dresses, even looking at the gold earrings, because Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach. And the best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They do it by partnering with top factories, and Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to you. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/DSM for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/DSM to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/DSM. Are you in the market for a weight loss solution that works? Weight Loss by Hers provides access to affordable weight loss treatment plans, including GLP-1 medications and personalized care to help you hit whatever your goals are. Hers offers a holistic weight loss program with personalized solutions, including compounded GLP-1 weekly injections featuring the same active ingredient as Ozempic and Wegovy or oral medication kits. Here's what you do. You submit an online intake form, and a licensed medical provider will determine what plan is best for you. If you're prescribed, your program includes medication delivered straight to your door, ongoing care, and online support, all at one low cost. Compounded GLP-1 injections start at $165 per month with a 12-month plan paid up front for new subscribers. Start your initial free online visit today at forhers.com/DSM. That's forhers.com/DSM for your personalized weight loss treatment options. Forhers.com/DSM. Hers weight loss is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions apply. Wegovy and Ozempic are not compounded. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased. A lot of times when we hear ourselves on tape, the first thing that sticks out to us is the sound of our voice. When Ethan first heard the episode we put out in 2020, he was struck by the tenor of his voice, how he sounded almost enthusiastic to be sharing all this.
My relief of finally talking about these things just comes off as some excitement. It's like a salaciousness, glorifying cheating. And it was really hard to have that reflected back at me. And so that was particularly knife twisty.
Ethan is remarried now. In some ways, he said talking to me was helpful, but there's definitely parts of it he's not proud of. He looks back and thinks he was needlessly cruel to his ex-wife. And Ethan said that when he left our first interview, it hadn't gone the way he had planned. He thought we were going to talk about the dynamics of sex work, how sex changes when you bring money into it. And he wasn't so much expecting to closely examine his choices.
What it ended up being about, I think what the episode so much ended up being about was just the act of my cheating, and I think, again, for me personally, thinking about the effect that it had on me is your straightforward questions about all of these things. And I had never, this was my conversation with you was the first time I was completely honest with anyone. My therapist at the time knew that I was cheating. She didn't know it was with a sugar baby. And so just that, the act of that conversation just shone a light on all of these things that so much of me was trying to keep dark.
Uh-huh.
And just leaving our last conversation with just sort of this, a full awareness of, oh, fuck, I am a monster.
Uh-huh. Monster is a strong word. What happened after that?
After the episode?
Or after we talked, it sounds like it created a sort of opening up and a rupture and pain.
Yes.
And then what happened?
And then years of feeling like an absolutely horrible person. I fell into an emotionally abusive relationship where my girlfriend basically reflected all the bad things. She said she was classic sort of trauma dumping. This was my first major relationship after my divorce. And it's I tell her everything all at once on the third date or something like that, or second time we had sex or something like that. It just all spills out.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted her to reflect back to me how horrible of a person I was. And she had been cheated on, and she was more than happy to fill that role in my life. And so then it was about a year of external reminders of just, needing to know where my location was, questioning what I was doing, needing to show photographic evidence that I was where I said I was, and all of that. And all of this sort of backed by this reminder, remember, you did this horrible thing. You're a horrible person. This is what you deserve. And and then found an amazing therapist who I told everything to, and slowly worked on things with her, and was able to end that relationship, and eventually got back into the dating game, as well. And I mean, along those lines, my now wife, like that trust, I mean, just like that she chooses to trust me is the greatest gift that she can give. And it was, we did it right, in terms of like having the conversation, like around, what I did in my first marriage. She doesn't know that it was with a sugar baby. And I talked with my therapist a lot about whether that was something I should, tell her or not, whether that was salient.
And did you always know you wanted to marry again?
Yes, there was, and there still remains. So I say yes, sort of like with the caveat of I didn't know if I deserved to be happy again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew I wanted to be, I knew I wanted to be with someone. I knew I wanted to have a family. Right after getting divorced, like there's, certainly this question of like, what is the, like clearly I did not keep my promises. So what's the point of making those promises in the first place? But like the farther I got from my divorce, the more it was like, no, marriage is a commitment. It is what you make of it.
I want to offer, I'm curious how this will sound to you, but there's lots of ways to betray a partner where there's an agreement of monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
There is going online and finding a sort of connection through seeking arrangement, like you did, because you're noticing something. You're noticing a curiosity and a need. There's the other sort where, say you're in a monogamous marriage and you notice yourself noticing other women, maybe at work, maybe at the PTA meeting, maybe, at the playground. And one could argue that being someone who hires a sex worker as opposed to kind of being on the prowl for the next great connection is a less insidious sort of cheating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So why do you think, what's stopping you from saying, when I was at my most chaotic, acting out, and I was cheating, this is how I did it. I just want you to know. Like, what's stopping you from saying that?
We honestly don't talk about my cheating that much. We did a lot. Like I would say months, kind of 3 through 6 of us dating. And then it's not sort of this omnipresent, thing. It is internally, it is always going to be, I'm always going to have a scarlet A hidden around somewhere on my body, depending how big and how fresh it's going to be, depends on how recently I've talked with you, or like there's been other things like, not just you. I'm glad we're talking. But so no, there are times when things come when it comes up, when it comes to the foreground. My history of cheating, like particularly for me. Have you seen Spirited on Apple Plus? Have you seen that?
I haven't watched that.
Oh,
no.
Oh my God, it's the best. I have a
okay.
So it's a musical. Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell and.
Okay. Yes, I know about this,
yes,
but I haven't seen it.
It is. So Will Ferrell plays Scrooge. It's a musical. It's a riff on Christmas Carol. There's a song called Unredeemable, and so it's like, Will Ferrell's, character, Scrooge's character, sort of singing this song of sort of this fear. He's done all this good in the world, but he was such a bad person beforehand, and so does that make him unredeemable? And what's nice about watching that every holiday season is like my relationship to that song changes a little bit. Like the first year was my then girlfriend and I had been together for just 6 months or so. And so then this song brings up all these feels, on from my point of view. And so I share them with her. So times like that have come up, and it's certainly still something that we talk about as it arises. But telling her about the details would be like incongruent with the way that we have these conversations in the first place. And again, would be, I think, a lot more for me than for her.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. There's something to be said for not painting the picture so that she has a visual image of you at your worst. Yeah. If you feel like you've been staring at that picture enough yourself. I want to, before we move too far away from our last conversation and that episode, how do you think back on the way that you talked about your now ex? Like, is there anything around that you, I don't know, do you think about that?
I was so angry at her. And I was so hurt, and the pain was so big that I just wanted to throw it at anyone that I could. And that, like, honestly, my biggest regret of talking with you, last time was the impact that it had on her.
You wrote me in an email just a few weeks ago that you think about this on a near daily basis.
I think about my cheating on a near daily basis. Yeah. Absolutely.
And how do you think, who are you now, and how do you think back on that version of yourself?
The cognitive dissonance of just like, there is, no way in hell I will ever do anything like that again, paired with the constant fear of cheating again. I can't remember if I talked with you about if I had this realization, or if I had sort of like had this... did we talk about the two wolves? Do you remember?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
No.
So, there's like the old parable of there's two wolves inside of you. One is good and kind, one is bad. I'm destroying the parable. And this is like a grandfather talking to his son, and the son, or the grandson asks, like, well, which one wins? And the grandfather says, like, the one you feed.
Oh.
Yeah, and so for me, that was another like huge step of pain and healing. Of like, for years, I fed the wrong wolf, and that still sticks with me. Of what I'm doing, am I feeding the wrong wolf right now? Like, am I flirting too much with the barista? Like, am I starting to like feed the wrong wolf? Or I would say more often is, am I showing up in my relationship? Am I showing up in my marriage in the way that is truly reflective of who I am? Or am I starting to hide parts of myself? Because I was so disconnected from my heart in my first marriage. Like, I lived in sort of pure logic and it was a twisted logic, but I could say, like, listen, I've got a therapist who listens to me talk about my feelings. I've got like a massage therapist to like work out the kinks like in my upper and lower back, right? Like, my sex life with my wife is not satisfying. And so then it is such a small leap to, it's like, well, I'm just going to pay to get this service, because I'm paying to get all these other services. Like, there was no heart in that decision, obviously.
Mm-hmm. When you think, like, how do I make sure I don't get stuck in my head with thinking about the rationales I can justify, like, stay connected to your heart. Like, how are you doing that?
Speaking up, but more importantly, not filtering my words, like quite as much. I like to think I can read people pretty well, and that all goes back to family of origin. Both my parents divorcing and sort of both of them becoming depressed, like at, sort of key parts of my development, right? And so then just like adopting this, like I knew exactly what to say to my dad. I knew exactly what to say to my mom to kind of get what I wanted. Like I could manipulate them. And so like, and it's sort of like this empathetic manipulation, but it is in the end still manipulation. And so, like I can do that and I can see that, like, it's like, I can see the way of wording things that, is, will get a prettier outcome, but isn't necessarily the full truth.
Yeah.
So living in that discomfort of like, I need to say this because it's true, and certainly be kind about it and, and all of that, but be willing to say the truth more unvarnished and deal with the messiness that comes from that.
That's a listener we're calling Ethan. My first conversation with Ethan was produced in 2020 when we were still at WNYC. Our team included then Katie Bishop, Annabelle Bacon, Afi Yellow-Duke, Emily Botine, and Andrew Dunn. Andrew Dunn is still with us at Slate, and our team now includes Zoe Azoulay and Cameron Drews. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer. Hillary Fry is Slate's editor-in-chief. Please support the production of our show by becoming a member of Slate Plus. You'll not only be supporting the work we do on Death, Sex, and Money, you'll also get access to things like ad-free listening to Death, Sex, and Money and all of the podcasts that Slate makes. You can subscribe directly from the Death, Sex, and Money show page on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, or just go to slate.com/DSM Plus to get access wherever you listen. If you are a fan of our show, really, please sign up. It helps us a lot. Our theme music is by the Reverend John DeLure and Steve Lewis. If you are new to our show, welcome. We're glad you're here. You can find us and follow us on Instagram @DeathSexMoney. And I write a weekly newsletter. You can subscribe at annasale.substack.com. And if you have something from your life you want to share that could be a potential episode, send us an email to our inbox at deathsexmoney@slate.com. I'm Anna Sale, and this is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate.